Today we're going to be taking a look at the skinning process that takes place at Kazclops. I will be sharing with you in detail the stages that are involved in turning a Kazm creature skin from donation to a finished headpiece. But first, we need to take a closer look at how exactly a Kazm creature skin works. Kazm creature skins protect them from the harsh environments that are present on the Kazm, much like how our skin protects us from the elements that are present on Earth. The main difference between our skin and the skin of a Kazm creature is that Kazm creatures shed their entire old skin in one go. For us, we shed off dead skin cells continuously as new ones emerge from underneath. I would compare the shedding of a Kazm creature as very similar to how reptiles shed their skin in our human world. There are 3 significant growth points at which a Kazm creature sheds its skin before they stop growing altogether. Once they stop growing, they fall into a much more regular shedding cycle. So now let's take a look at these 3 different growth stages. If we start from the moment of birth, we can see that the Kazm creature has not fully taken on all the characteristics of its subspecies. It's born with its color, the general species type, such as a bear, bunny, spikes. It has its eyes, and very, very short limbs. The first growth point occurs approximately 1 week after birth. I want to make a note that these timelines vary from species to species, but most fall into these general guidelines. At this very first growth point, the Kazm creature baby sheds its baby skin and begins growing towards its teenage stage. Once the Kazm creature has grown fully into its teenage stage, the second growth point occurs. This can take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks. We see an increase of head size. The limbs start to grow longer at this growth point, and quite a lot of its characteristics from the subspecies have begun to form. We begin seeing things like pockets, piercings, beads, and other markings that differentiate the creatures from their general species into more specialized subspecies. I'm not fully sure yet if these characteristics are genetic or if they're shaped by the environment, but studies and research are continuing to be conducted into these topics. Once the Kazm creature has shed off its teenage skin, it begins growing towards its adult stage. At this final growth point, the head size continues to enlarge and the limbs continue to get longer. The time between the second growth stage and the third and final growth stage can take anywhere between 16 to 28 weeks. The growth between these stages is slow, to give the Kazm creatures a chance to adjust to their environments and to learn all of the necessary rituals. Once this final stage is reached, growth stops completely, but skin shedding continues at a frequency of about 2 to 3 years. Now that you have a better idea of how skin growth occurs on a Kazm creature, let's take a closer look at how the creatures actually shed their skin. Kazm creatures know that their skin is getting ready to shed because it starts to become dry and crusty. The movements of the Kazm creatures begins to get restricted, and they begin to enter a deep resting state. The process can take anywhere between 5 to 10 hours, depending on the size of the Kazm creature and the condition that the skin is in. It's advised that the Kazm creatures take regular baths during this process and use essential oils to keep their skin soft and to avoid any unnecessary damage during the shedding process. When the required moisture levels are achieved in the shedding skin and the Kazm creature has been still for a few hours, the old skin becomes fully detached. The area around the eyes remains intact from the moment of birth until death. So the skin that surrounds this eye area is actually what sheds off. Once the Kazm creature can sense full detachment of the skin, it steps out from its old skin and is now presented with a new skin. The new skin is almost like a blank canvas, which the Kazm creature now has to go and get adorned with all the stuff that it was previously adorned with. Some Kazm creatures like to shed their skin at home, while recently others have preferred to come to Kazclops directly so that they can shed their skin and complete the donation process immediately afterwards. Now it's time we discuss the donation process and how I actually obtained the skin. Before the deal between Kazclops and the Kazm creature representatives was made, I used to find processed Kazm creature skins in yarn shops. I believe that these skins were from ancient times. The very first one I found was in Turkey, as I explained in my previous video, but soon after that first skin was found, I began to come across more and more in yarn shops across the world. I kind of became addicted to finding these ancient Kazm creature skins in yarn shops, and I started traveling across the world in order to encounter them. Sometimes I would find nothing, but quite often I would find at least one or two of these ancient Kazm skins. The search for these ancient Kazm creature skins wasn't just limited to yarn shops. I often came across them in charity shops or in secondhand listings on websites like eBay or Etsy. The reason I knew that it was a Kazm creature skin as opposed to a regular ball of yarn was because these Kazm skins were almost always accompanied with the vision of their true form. So, after the deal between Kazclops and the Kazm creature representatives was made, a donation box was set up. This gave the Kazm creatures a chance to anonymously donate their skins while the trust was being built further. Currently, there's a much more advanced and sophisticated method of donation at Kazclops. After a very rigorous and long-winded process of obtaining planning permission from the Kazm creature representatives, a spa has been set up at Kazclops. At this spa, Kazm creatures can come in for the duration of their shedding process and complete the donation immediately afterwards. The spa is very much like a relaxing retreat for these Kazm creatures. When the Kazm creatures arrive at the spa, they must fill out a simple form so that I can obtain the necessary details required to profile and document each finished headpiece. The Kazm creatures can then access the locker room where they're assigned their very own locker and provided with a spa kit. In this spa kit, they receive a towel, slippers, face mask, selection of essential oils, eye mask, and a container for their old skin. There are different rooms at the Kazclops spa, each with its own special purpose to ensure ease and comfort during the shedding process. There are multiple baths set up where Kazm creatures can go and soak in. There are also steam rooms for Kazm creatures that prefer to take steam over soaking in a bath. If a Kazm creature would like to partake in both activities, they are free to do so. The purpose of the bath and steam rooms is to maintain the humidity and moisture levels required for optimal skin shedding. Once the Kazm creature feels like it's ready to shed its skin, they enter the molting rooms. Here, the Kazm creature is provided with some light refreshments and gentle, relaxing music to calm the Kazm creatures. Most Kazm creatures like to meditate during this stage, as it helps them to stay still while the skin detaches. Then, when the skin has detached and the Kazm creature has stepped out from the old skin, the Kazm creature folds up its old skin and puts it in the container that was provided. They can then proceed to the moisturizing rooms. Here, in the moisturizing rooms, they're provided with very high-end and specialized moisturizers that help keep their fresh new skin soft and supple, as well as providing excellent protection from the harsh Kazm environment. When the Kazm creature is ready, they must leave the spa and make their way to the donation box in order to donate their old skin and claim their reward. On the donation form, I asked the Kazm creature to list out 3 resources it would like in exchange for its old skin. After I receive the skin, I evaluate the condition that it's in and decide which one of the 3 resources it listed to give in exchange. Baby Kazm creatures cannot come to the spa. They must wait until they reach the 2nd growth stage to partake in the spa activities. Until then, their parents donate their old Kazm baby skins into the donation box. The skins of these babies usually isn't big enough to create a full headpiece at Kazclops. Instead, I tend to use them for sculptures or small decorations. Upon request, some baby skins are saved to be used with their teen and adult skins to create bigger pieces. Now that we've looked at how the donation process works in detail, let's take a look at how I turn the skin into the yarn that I use to make the headwear. When I have the old skin, I make a very quick sketch of how the finished headpiece should look like. Then I remove all the adornments like the flowers, beads, or piercings from the old skin. I then soak the old skin into the skin amplifier liquid. The recipe for the skin amplifier liquid was given to me by the Kazm creature representatives in a book called Ancient Kazm Methods. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to disclose the ingredients that go into the skin amplifier liquid. When the skin is left in a jar of this skin amplifier liquid, it expands to 10 times its size and becomes unravelable. I have been trying to make sense of how exactly this liquid works, but it appears that it's inexplainable using human sciences. After 3 days of being in this liquid, the skin is removed and needs to be dried out, ensuring that no more than 0.005% of moisture remains. After checking the moisture levels with the moisture meter and confirming that it's satisfactorily dried out, I can put the skin through the Kazclops skin converter machine. The blueprints for this machine were also obtained from the book Ancient Kazm Methods. The dried out skin needs to be handled extremely carefully, as it's very fragile at this stage and can completely shatter and be destroyed. If moisture levels above 0.005% are present in the skin at this stage, the machine can get jammed up and cease functioning. I have learned this the hard way. The skin gets processed in this machine for about 75 minutes. In this time, I set up my yarn winder at the winding station. When the skin comes out of the machine, I can then wind it up into a cake of yarn. Now, the skin is ready to be crocheted with. For quite a long time, donations were anonymous at Kazclops. This meant that I received a lot of unauthorized Kazm creature skins, as well as some artifacts that can't be traced back to their origin. The reward system used to be different too. Back then, a Kazm creature would donate its skin and choose whatever reward it liked. Some Kazm creatures exploited this system by donating faulty or damaged skins, and then taking a really high reward. The old system also allowed for bandits to steal skins and donate them, taking the reward from the Kazm creature that should have originally received it. I have now implemented some changes to the donation box system. Kazm creatures can no longer choose their own reward, which deters bandits from donating faulty skins, and also encourages Kazm creatures to take time for self-care during the shedding process. There is still the problem of unauthorized donations. Some Kazm creatures abandon their pets at the donation box, whilst others interfere with the ongoing archaeological excavations by donating artifacts that can't be traced back to their origins. So I have thought about putting cameras up at the donation box, but this proposal was rejected by the Kazm creature representatives. Kazm creatures don't like to be photographed or videoed immediately after they've shed their skin. They don't have the full markings of their subspecies, things like their piercings, pockets, or other adornments. They feel too vulnerable to be recorded during this time. I had a meeting with the Kazm creature representatives to discuss all these issues with the donation box, and while they agreed with me that putting a camera up would be a good idea, they understand that Kazm creatures would be super against this idea. There's already a group of Kazm creatures that want to take the Kazm creature representatives down and to destroy the peace and tranquility that has recently emerged on the Kazm. So the Kazm creatures decided that it's best not to agitate this group any further. For now, complete privacy during the donation process is mandatory. So unfortunately, the problem of unauthorized donations still does occur, and Kazm creatures do still leave behind unwanted things. Another problem I face is the Kazm bandits. I do think these creatures warrant their own video, but to briefly explain, these bandits reside on the Kazm alongside the Kazm creatures. The difference between them and other Kazm creatures is that these bandits can't grow their own skins. They are outcasts. In order for them to survive on the harsh environments present at the Kazm, these bandits steal Kazm creature skins. Kazm creatures have a strong hatred towards them, and some killings have already taken place. I have even anonymously received ancient preserved Kazm bear bandit artifacts in the donation box. On one hand, I do sympathize with these bandits. I can see that they need the skins of others to survive on the Kazm. But on the other hand, I can see the trauma that it causes the Kazm creature to have their skin stolen and their livelihood taken away from them. Therefore, I condemn the actions of the bandits. We'll take a closer look at the bandits in a future video, so I'm gonna leave it at this. I think now is a good time to discuss the differences between good skin harvesting and bad skin harvesting. Good skin harvesting is what takes place at Kazclops. This is where the Kazm creatures are allowed to shed their skins at their own pace. This results in a much slower process and output, but it's very ethical and ensures that no Kazm creatures are harmed during the process. Bad skin harvesting is what took place in ancient times, and it was one of the direct contributors to the near collapse of the chasm. From my research, I found that back then, 80% of chasm creatures were trapped in harsh skin processing facilities. They were injected with a growth serum that caused them to shed their skin at a much more rapid rate. Their skins were then forcibly extracted and turned into yarns. This practice was highly unethical and left generations of chasm creatures traumatized. I believe that some of the existing skins that I come across in our human world are excess overflow from the past. That's why it feels so great to honor them and convert them back into their original donators. I'm able to give a new life to the leftover ancient chasm skins, and I now provide a safer environment for skin donation. Working with these chasm creatures has given my life a lot of meaning and purpose. I'm so excited to continue researching and learning more about these creatures, all while crocheting their skins into unique headwear for us humans. If you'd like to own your own unique headpiece, head on over to Kazclops.com. When you buy a piece, you are directly helping to rebuild the chasm and support the chasm creature that donated its skin. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where I post announcements of my newest creations. I hope you enjoyed learning about the skinning process. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.